Hi, welcome back to Box to Lights and welcome to this presentation of War of the Ring, the card game Fire and Swords. Fire and Swords is the newest expansion. We've had the base game, we've had Against the Shadow, and now Fire and Swords. I've got the base game in which I've shown you already. I showed you a demo. I haven't shown you Against the Shadow, so I'm going to do that in the next video, but we're going to integrate with that Fire and Sword, so I'm going to kind of show you them both together. But before we do that, I wanted to give you a quick preview of what's coming in Fire and Swords expansion, because Ares Games have sent me like this little preview of what's in there. I don't have the box, they just sent me some decks of cards, but there is a few tokens as well, which they didn't send me. And obviously I've printed PDF of the rules so that I can figure out what's what. But let me show you what's in there. First off, we've got two new decks for the Free People and Shadows. We've got a third deck which is going to integrate with Against the Shadow for the solo rules. I'll come back to that in a little bit. And we've also got a couple of new battlegrounds for solo. I'll come back to those, right? They'll lead into our demonstration of the solo game. For your faction cards, you've got two decks of 30 cards, and they're going to be introducing some new factions. For the Free Peoples, we've got the Northmen, and you also got some cards for existing factions. And then for Shadow, we have the Easterlings and the Ruffians. Now, the idea of this is that this expansion is including an expanded trilogy scenario that allows you to play up to 6 players. So for the Free Peoples, that would be Frodo, Gandalf and Aragorn, and we're going to be adding some new cards into them. So for Frodo on the dwarf side, we have, let's see where the dwarves, here we go. We have the Army of the Blue Mountains, Erebor Guard, Ironfoot, and the Book of Mazabal. And then for the hobbits, we've got 100 sturdy hobbits, Farmer Maggot, Rosy Cotton. There's some new items here, a new event disguised as orcs. And then on the Frodo team are the Rohan as well. I think there might be an additional Rohan, yeah. Theodred is a Rohan character. Then for Gandalf, Elf and Wizard, we've got a few elves. Sylvan Elves, Celeborn, Shipwright here, Glorfindel, Thranduil. Then you've got Radagast and Tom Bombadil here on the Wizard team. And then finally for the Aragorn, for the Free Peoples, you have some extra Dunedain cards. Grey Company. An item here for Strider, Aragorn or Elrond, Athelas. Horn of Gondor. Stout Staves. Some new events. And then, of course, joining Aragorn are this new faction, the Northmen. Okay, so we've got Northern Militia, Woodmen, Barliman Butterbur character, Grimborn the Old, King Brand, Bill the Pony. He's a mount, a hobbit mount actually. Okay, so that's the Free People's side. On the bad guys, you've got the Witch King, Saruman, and Bill Ferny. So no extra Mordor cards. For Saruman, you have these extra monstrous and Isengard characters. Okay, so we've got some half-orcs and goblin men, a little mischief event. Goblins of the Misty Mountains, an orc chieftain, the spiders of Mirkwood, a watcher in the water, some wolves. Fantastic. Okay. So that's for Saruman. The Bill Ferny player is going to use the Easterlings and the Southrons. We've got the extra couple of Southrons here. We've got an event and a character. And then this new faction, which is the Easterlings. Okay, so the allies of Sauron, Axemen, Garrison, Mirkwood Skirmishers. Right, so a bunch of new Easterling characters. And some events. Okay. Mixed in with your existing cards, of course, and these ruffians. Okay, so Bill Ferny's got the ruffians, dirty thieving ruffians. There's Bill. Okay. A Sackville Baggins. Look, Lotho. He's one of the bad guys of the Shire. And Ted Sandyman. A ruffian event lost, it says here. Alright. Okay, so again, joining the Easterlings for Bill Ferny team. Right. So those are your new faction cards. Like I said, that creates a 6-player game, right? Three peoples and 3 shadow. But obviously, if you want to do that cooperatively, or if you've got fewer than 6, you can still do that. So if you want to do it solo, for example, you could control all 3 free peoples as different teams and play against the shadow, using the Against the Shadow expansion. So to that end, what you'll find is there's a new turn order card as well with the four players on it. Now we've got one with all 6 players on it, showing you your turn orders. There's Bill Ferny on here, look. Okay, Gandalf. So the equivalent shadow deck, we've got all those cards once more in a new Against the Shadow deck in this expansion, right, to allow you to play Against the Shadow. Take those cards out, replace them with these, and choose whichever scenario. So the other scenarios that come in this, as well as the expanded trilogy with 3 against 3, so I've only printed this on PDF, but we've got War in the North as well. So War in the North is kind of going back to what you had in the original game, which is effectively the 4-player game. The trilogy scenario is now called War in the North. And with War in the North, what it's going to do is mix in these new cards with cards from the base game. And obviously you can play Against the Shadow as well. So you can use a mixture of Against the Shadow solo cards with these new Against the Shadow new solo cards. All right. So basically play the way you played before, but with these new cards mixed in. So you got the Frodo player here taking a bunch of Northmen, all right, and then you got the Witch King taking Easterlings and Mordor, the Balrog of Mordor taking Isengard Monstrous and the Ruffians. And then additionally there's this epic duel, which is an extended 2-player game, again with all the new cards mixed in with the base game cards. Okay. One thing to note is that when you do play this, in particular this new 4-player War in the North, it's got more of a mixture of the new cards. So if there's cards removed, it's more of the base game cards. Right? So you're seeing more of the new cards. Okay, so those are the faction cards. What about Paths and Battlegrounds? Well, we've got those too, but significantly there's a new part of the game introduced in this expansion called Skirmishes. Now, let me show you that too. Now, I'm going to show you it now because, interestingly, Skirmishes won't be in the solo game. All right, so a little bit of a downside. If you want to play with Skirmishes, you want to play solo, no, there's no rules for Skirmishes. So Skirmishes, I mean, it's only a very small part of the expansion, but Skirmishes are just for the multiplayer. And when I say a small part, there's 13 new cards. So out of this deck of new Paths and Battlegrounds, only 13 of them are Skirmishes. So let me show you. So On the shadow side, we've got 4 new battlegrounds and these 3 skirmishes. Now, if you remember, battlegrounds we're fighting over, and we're fighting for these victory points. We do have a couple have solo or against the shadow specific versions. Okay, so Dunland here, for example, here's the against the shadow version. You know that because of this icon in the bottom here. Okay, and Rune the same. Okay, so those are these against the shadow versions. I'll put them to one side. But here's your new battlegrounds for the shadow. So new places that we're going to be fighting over. Skirmishes, they're going to be mixed into the battlegrounds. But when they come up, what you'll notice is they don't have any victory points. But what they do instead is they activate one of the battlegrounds. So for example here, if you look at the skirmish in Nern, it will activate Moranon if it's available. If it's not, minus Morgul. Okay. If it's not, you just draw again. Okay, keep drawing. You might get another skirmish. But these will sit alongside, so you can have one or more. They act like battlegrounds, but you're going to effectively have more than one battleground skirmish in play. But instead of awarding victory points, you can optionally fight over these things, and they'll give an award. Okay, instead of victory points, they'll give the reward. So, for example, this one says if the defender wins, the Mordor player draws a card. If the attacker wins, remove 1 corruption. So they're little side battles that can take place for these small rewards. You take those rewards and then remove from the game. So they kind of create a little distraction from the main battleground. Okay, there's Angmar, Near Harad, and Nern on the shadow side. And then we have some more over on the Free People's side. So we'll come back to the new battlegrounds in a minute. But there's a lot more. There's 7 here, I think. More than that, 10. 10 skirmishes on the Free People's side. Okay, so let me tell you again. So they get mixed in. If you draw one, you activate the battleground that it says, Helm's Deep or Edoras here. If both of them are out of play, you just draw again and you'll keep drawing, and that may mean you draw another skirmish. And you'll keep drawing until a battleground, at least one battleground, gets activated. Remember, there's one battleground in at a time, right? So you could have a battleground on its own. If you draw a battleground with no skirmishes, you could have one skirmish and one battleground. You could have multiple skirmishes with one battleground. All right, that's the way it works. Caer Andros, Carrock, Ered Luin, the Falls of Ison. Like I say, the Iron Hills, each one has its own little defender wins, attacker wins reward. All these little skirmishes. So it adds another interesting dimension to what's going on each round. We're not just fighting over paths and battlegrounds, you're potentially having these little side skirmishes as well with their own little rewards. All right, let's have a look at the new Free People's battlegrounds that are introduced as well. And these are just shuffled in depending on what the scenario asks for as well. Okay. Dale, Erebor, Grey Havens, the Shire, and the Woodland Realm. Okay. New Free People's locations. All right, battlegrounds. And then, of course, we've got new paths as well. So these go up to 9. And again, so we've got 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And you can just shuffle these. So it's one new path for every number. Okay, up to 9. All right. So, for example, number 1, a long expected party. So just shuffle these in with your regular ones. So instead of having 2 number 1s, I've now got 3 number 1s. Okay, perfect. the Barrow Downs, the Last Homely House, High Pass, Fangorn, the Black Gates. Some iconic locations here, right? There we go. There's your new paths. Wonderful. That's it. That's the new components and the new rules. I like the skirmishes. It's a very simple rule. Nothing complicated to add, really. Games up to 6. A little bit more complicated if you want to control 3 factions. But the option's there. And I really like the new scenarios and the way that you've got new ways to build new 4-player and 2-player duels as well, solo or co-op with against the shadow. All right, so that's your new expansion. Some wonderful iconic characters and locations mixing into this War of the Ring card game. Now, when they sent me this, they also sent me a couple more cards. I've not opened these, but I'm guessing these are promos. We have promo number 5 and promo number 6 are Goldberry and Old Man Willow. So a wizard character and a monstrous character. Just throw those in with their respective factions, one each. Look. There's your full set of 6 promos. So perhaps we'll mix those in as well. Why don't we, for our demonstration of the solo game. That's it then. That's Fire and Swords. We've got some iconic new locations. They'll see us journey to the dwarven city of Erebor, the lonely mountain, and meet its king, Dian Ironfoot, or sail from the Grey Havens, where dwells Círdan the Shipwright, the eldest of the elves, and march your easterling armies out of ruin, or storm the Shire with the men of Dunlan. But in Fire and Swords you'll meet new foes, Bill Ferny and the wild men of Dunlan, half-orcs and goblin men, and the spiders of Mirkwood.